watching. Gen Alpha still can't. I don't know that word. Reads? Gen Alpha still can't read. Let's see what's going on.
According to the nation's report card, 40% of Gen Alpha do not have basic reading skills, the
That's
highest
crazy.
level in over 2 decades, and as nearly half of all new teachers are already leaving the field.
I'm not surprised about the Louisiana one. Dude, I hated living in Louisiana. People were so mean, too. I remember I went to Popeyes and they called me a...
4th grade reading scores are now falling back towards levels seen in the 1980s.
What?
Raising the question, why is Gen Alpha facing a full-blown education crisis? Despite decades of technological advancement, you would expect Gen Alpha to be excelling in what should be the greatest time to live in human history. Yet, they're not only struggling to read, but 61% are considered below proficient in math, meaning there are now more 4th...
Okay, I'm starting to see the problem. Just the brain rot.
graders who know the viral 6-7 trend then can actually explain the difference between even and odd numbers, reflecting a system not shaped by accident, but by decades of decisions that prioritize short-term outcomes over the long-term development of the nation's youth.
Dude, people who can't read are eventually going to have to do surgery on you when you're old. Think about that.
By the early 1970s, when the country began formally tracking educational progress, the system was beginning to improve because, for the first time, meaningful investment was actually being directed towards emerging generations. Students were staying in school longer, reading and math scores were stable or rising, graduation rates were climbing, and millions of students who had been previously excluded were now receiving a formal education. Even per-pupil spending was increasing as states invested in expanding schools, hiring staff, and building a more inclusive system. However, this early sign of progress was severely disrupted in the early 1980s as President Ronald Reagan entered office with a platform that included eliminating the Department of Education. In response, Secretary Terrell Bell helped assemble the National Commission on Excellence in Education, not to evaluate the system, but to justify the department's existence. The resulting 1983 report, A Nation at Risk, deliberately manufactured a narrative of crisis. Commission insiders, including staffer James Harvey, later admitted that the group began with a predetermined conclusion of widespread mediocrity. And
dude, this is gonna sound like I'm glazing education, so don't get it crazy and don't call me a nerd. But I actually liked going to school. I liked school because I liked taking a test. It felt like a mini game. I liked leveling up. I thought it was fun.
Then cook the books, highlighting declining averages and international comparisons, while ignoring the most obvious reality: more students were entering the system and taking those same tests. When the data was actually broken down across all categories, the nation's education system was improving. Yet the report's hyperbolic language, a rising tide of mediocrity, and the claim that mediocre education was equivalent to an act of war by a foreign power, dominated public discourse, drowning out the gains of the 1970s and justifying a shift towards standardization, testing, and measurable outcomes over actually teaching students how to learn.
Yeah, it was kind of like a mini game, which is why I kind of brought that up. Like, you just had to learn how to take the test. Does that make sense? Like, I remember my least favorite day ever was we had something in Texas called the STAR test. It's like the test they give you, the standardized test at the end of the year. And I still remember when I was done, you had to wait until every single kid was done taking the test. You would sit there in boredom for 8 hours doing nothing. And eventually you weren't even allowed to like draw on the paper or like read a book. You had to sit there and stare at the wall.
Setting the foundation for the widespread crisis now defining Gen Alpha's education. As a result of the cookbook crisis narrative, influential figures began promoting and benefiting from a series of false solutions. Most notably, the system continued rapidly shifting away from phonics, where students learned to read by sounding out words, towards approaches like 3-cueing, where students were encouraged to guess unfamiliar words based on sentence structure, surrounding context, or even pictures, rather than actually decoding them, allowing students to appear fluent while never developing the ability to break down and understand the words on the page. Lucy Calkins became one of the most influential figures behind popularizing this movement, and despite reading scores drastically declining throughout the 1990s, her curriculum still reached roughly 16% of all K-2 teachers nationally, and even after the 2000 National Reading.
Do you think teachers get mad about this? Like, they probably grew up learning a different way because they're older, and then they see these new rules that they have to implement, and they're like, what the hell?
Panel strongly endorsed systematic phonics, these approaches remained in place as Calkins continued promoting cueing strategies long after they were shown to be harmful to beginning and struggling readers, contributing to a widespread literacy crisis, most clearly seen in Gen Alpha.
Dude, and the thing that's also about literacy I've noticed with younger people because I'm old is like everything is so casual. Even in like emails, they'll be like, oh, what's going on for real type shit. Like, just send a nice email, man.
At the same time, policies like No Child Left Behind further reshaped the incentives within the classroom. Rather than improving how students were taught, the system began tying school funding and performance directly to standardized test results, forcing teachers and administrators to prioritize whatever could be measured. Over time, this narrowed the curriculum, incentivized teaching to the test, and pulled attention away from foundational skills like decoding, comprehension, and long-term development. But more importantly, it changed how schools responded to failure. Because performance was measured through aggregate test scores, schools were often punished for low proficiency rates across entire student populations.
Is that why sometimes the teachers before the test will be like, please actually try. We need you to pass, please.
Creating a system where struggling students became a liability to overall performance. Retaining students meant those same low scores would be counted again the following year, while also increasing long-term dropout risk. So instead of holding students back and addressing foundational gaps, many schools began pushing them forward, relying on summer programs, test-focused interventions, or simply reclassifying performance to protect overall metrics, leading to decades of compounded decay, where Gen Alpha is no longer progressing through a system built around learning, but instead moving through one that increasingly resembles a glorified daycare. As these policies took hold, both A Nation at Risk and No Child Left Behind effectively shifted the burden of failure onto teachers, allowing the system to treat them as replaceable cogs rather than
sad. That makes me so sad because like there's so many people when you're younger that play like a foundational role in your life, and you're just gonna like keep passing people in and out of a job where they care the most. It's just so sad, dude. And also, they get paid so bad, but they love their job, so they just keep going back to being a teacher because they want to make people, like, I don't know, live a good life. It's like a very passion-filled job.
Professionals. So while Gen Alpha is in desperate need of educational support, teachers now face a pay penalty approaching 27%, earning significantly less than similarly educated professionals.
Wow.
While real wages have actually declined over the past decade, despite record levels of overall educational spending, forcing over 70% of teachers to hold a second job, with 31% working in roles like Uber or retail just to make ends meet. And with most of them working those jobs throughout the school year while managing classrooms of 23 to 26 students, 77% report their job as frequently stressful, and 52%.
Dude, imagine what it would be like dealing with other people's kids all day. Oh, hell no! You cannot pay me enough to do that! Oh, hell no!
Say they would not advise a young person starting out today to become a teacher. A truly horrific sign for the nation's future. To see what this actually looks like inside Gen Alpha's education, I spoke with an elementary school interventionist with over 20 years of experience in the education system who explained the extra burden that teachers are now facing.
The social emotional is heavier now than it's ever been because structures and supports at home are not as strong as what they've been in the past. And then there's
because now it's just like, oh, you're making me mad. Play on the iPad. Go play Roblox.
Always the time requirement. You know, you're always expected to do something and have it all planned out. But there's so many meetings that must take place. There's no planning time. And so then there's that time burden that shifts to outside of work. And how do you make that happen? Especially if you're a person that's working a second job.
Yeah.
Especially if you're a person that's running after kids. Like where do you find those spaces? I think those things are really hard on teachers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just trying to keep up.
Now you may be wondering, if this lack of respect for the nation's teachers and educational decay has been building for decades, why are we only just now seeing it show up with Gen Alpha? It's not like millions of American adults can't read. According to the Barbara Bush Foundation for Family Literacy, 54% of American adults read below a 6th grade level, while nearly half cannot read a book written at an 8th grade level.
That's real? Oh my God. I can read. I choose not to read League of Legends Alt Chat, but I could read it if I wanted to.
In math, 34% of US adults scored at the lowest levels of numeracy, meaning they can barely do simple addition and subtraction.
Guys, we gotta do a stream where I take a math test for a 5th grader and a 5th grader reading exam. I gotta know if I'm a part of this like statistic at all.
Of whole numbers, placing the United States near the bottom among developed countries. So when you combine a system that has been failing generation after generation, an environment where teachers are increasingly overworked and undervalued, and a generation that is the first in human history to have never known a world without smartphones, tablets, high-speed internet, streaming services, and social media.
Dude, this makes me feel old because I'm like the grandpa now or the grandma now. I'm like, back in my day, we used to have to write our essay without the robot doing it for us.
What reason would Gen Alpha have to not be facing this crisis? Unlike previous generations who grew up watching their parents read the newspaper, visited libraries, or simply read a book because it was one of their only forms of entertainment, Gen Alpha is growing up in a fundamentally different world. By the age of 2, nearly 40% already have their own tablet.
What? At 2? What's he doing? Goo goo gaga. Gaga goo 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 gaga babies. Huh? That's insane, man. I didn't have a phone until I was a little bit older, but that was only because my dad lived somewhere else and like I was a 2 Christmases kid, so I had to talk to my dad.
And by the time they reach elementary school, 46% already have their own smartphone. Among children between 8 and 10, 65% are spending at least 4 hours a day on social media. Often
my brain rot. I can barely handle social media and I'm 28. Dude, and also imagine what that'll do to like development of kids. Like some people be really mean online.
Interacting with adult content by the time they turn 11. And while it's easy to point fingers at the greedy corporations, the failing education system, or simply label this just another lazy generation, the reality is,
did he point at me?
Failing education system, or simply label this just another
I'm not lazy. I'm not lazy. I'm on that grind set, don't even.
Another lazy generation. The reality is that 2-year-olds are being handed tablets. And when 69% of parents say,
my baby's gonna be on Team Liquid. Get in that Valorant game.
they are addicted to their phones, spending as much time scrolling as they do interacting with their own children. It becomes very difficult.
Oh my God. Dude, that's why it sucks for the teachers, man. The parents are just playing Uma Musume and they don't care about their kid.
For a generation raised in that environment to develop the ability to focus or even self-regulate inside the classroom, especially when they lose access to their device.
Yeah,
school
because it's not even really the kid's fault. Like, they grow up addicted to their phone and addicted to the iPad because it's all they know.
setting, it's not uncommon to have classrooms that have a really hot child, and that on a regular basis, that room is having to be cleared so that that child can figure out how to regain their self-control.
Yeah.
And so then teachers now having to remove, just say they're below 4th grade, they're now having to remove 21 of their children. 1 to 3 adults are needing to step up to help regulate a child. And so you start looking at the time demands and the lack of learning that's now happening with the other 21 children. I mean,
Yeah, I know what she meant. That was a really bad choice of words. She meant a temperamental child, okay? Everybody chill out. She did not mean it like that. I know we just watched the Subway video. But this was not a Subway moment, okay?
it's not even funny because it happens
It's
every
not.
day. Some of them are related to children being asked just to work because they have so little attention that being asked to work is such a cognitive load.
And when you have a generation already entering school with weaker foundational skills and shorter attention spans, the sudden shift to remote learning during the pandemic resulted in the largest learning loss in modern history.
I didn't even think about that. I forgot kids weren't going to school. And then it was just all on the computer. And like, you could probably play on your phone or play on another tab and be in school at the same time.
skipping over some of the most critical years for developing reading, focus, and basic comprehension. And because the system
I was too old for that. I was out of school.
continued pushing students forward, despite lacking those foundational skills, it also widened the gap between the students whose parents were more present during those years or had the resources to supplement their education, and those who did not.
Yeah, dude, it's just like all RNG, and that sucks for the kids at the end of the day.
Of the 40% of students who do not meet basic reading requirements, roughly 65 to 70% come from low-income households, with those students being 3 times more likely to be chronically absent from school. And as this gap continues to widen, collapsing academic performance may be the most commonly discussed metric, but this is also leading to serious forms of cognitive decline, increased dependence on digital devices, and even a resurgence in child labor.
Oh, it shows up everywhere.
What?
I mean, they're sometimes stealing because they don't have food at home. And, you know, I guess there was a part of me that used to think, oh my gosh, why is he stealing? But then when you start thinking, oh my gosh, he doesn't have food. He's stealing food because he's hungry.
Dude, when we didn't have food at school, I remember they would give me like a cheese sandwich that was 2 pieces of bread and 1 piece of Kraft cheese in the middle. Oh, bad times, bad times.
Lack of focus, concentration. When you start talking about just the amount of vocabulary they have in place. I mean, I said it earlier that a child that comes from poverty enters the school system a million words behind a middle-class child.
And while each of these structural issues on their own is already creating severe consequences, the nation is now blindly subjecting an already fragile generation to the first large-scale test of how AI will reshape learning.
Dude, that is insane. Like, I don't want to glaze myself, so don't think I'm like talking myself up, because like I like school, I got good grades. I can imagine nowadays that maybe like if you just like writing essays or you're good at writing, you'll just get flagged as AI. And then like, how do you defend yourself against like a teacher who's just like, well, the bot said the AI wrote this, you didn't write this.
Effectively highlight how concerned we should all be in this pursuit. Here is a clip of Linda McMahon, the Secretary of Education and co-founder of the WWE, explaining the importance of integrating AI into schools.
I think it was a letter or a report that I heard this morning. I wish I could remember the source, but that there is a school system that's going to start making sure that first graders or even pre-Ks have A1 teaching.
Well, he's got to be teaching like at least medium rare? Medium? Because he's not teaching medium well.
You know, every year starting, you know, that far down in the grades. And that's just that's a wonderful thing. Kids are sponges. You know, they just absorb everything. And so it wasn't all that long ago that we're going to have internet in our schools. Woo! Now, let's see A1 and how can that be helpful?
So regardless of whether our students are being taught by the most technologically advanced tool in the history of mankind, or a bottle of steak sauce, what is clear is that we have very little concern over what will actually happen to Gen Alpha in the process. In a recent Pew Research survey of over 1,400 teenagers, many of whom fall into older Gen Alpha, 44% said that they already use AI for at least some of their schoolwork.
Dude, that much? That is crazy.
While
I used to have to do it the old-fashioned way if I didn't do my homework. You know what you do? They say, okay, everybody, we're going to grade our own homework. And then pass it to the person in front of you. Then the person in front of you goes, can I have your homework? And you go, oh, give me a second. It's in my binder somewhere. And then as soon as they start grading, you go, la, 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 la. And then you write in the answer, la, 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 la.
percent said that they rely on it for most or all of it. Nearly half reported using AI for research. More than 40% use it to solve math problems, and over a third use it to edit their own writing. And while the survey didn't directly ask whether students were using AI to generate full assignments, nearly 60% of students said it has already been used to cheat either somewhat often or very often in their schools.
Dude.
And just like the 3 queuing approach, which has been clearly linked to the nation's literacy crisis, AI is now showing similar patterns in how it impacts cognitive ability. A recent study from MIT found that when participants used AI tools like ChatGPT to complete writing tasks, their brain showed significantly lower levels of engagement compared to those who worked through the material on their own. Participants relying on AI not only demonstrated weaker neural connectivity, but also showed lower memory retention, struggled to recall what they had just written, and reported less ownership over their work.
What did he just say?
Across multiple analyses, AI-assisted work became more uniform, less original, and far more dependent on pre-generated phrasing, reinforcing a system where a rush to completion replaces the desire for understanding.
Yeah, the only thing I really did hate about homework is like, I understood the concept whenever we were in school, and then to just like take it home and like do the same thing 900 times in a row felt like a huge waste of time, but I did it anyway.
Even when participants stopped using AI, those who had relied on it continued to show weaker recall and reduced cognitive engagement compared to those who had developed the material themselves. The study ultimately shows that while these tools may offer immediate productivity gains, their widespread use in educational tasks is directly tied to reduced critical thinking, weaker knowledge formation, and diminished independent problem-solving ability. Essentially,
like, how as a school do you fight against AI though? Like, there's not really much you can do other than like run it through a bot, but then like the bot's not always accurate. I just don't know. Turn off the Wi-Fi, but what if you have like that LTE type shit? Most people can't. In-house homework only. Block it from the PC. Turn off the internet. Yeah, you know, that's what we should do to combat AI in schools. We should turn off the internet, turn off the lights, turn off the computers, unplug the monitors, turn off, I don't know what's left. The floor, let everybody clip through it.
AI becomes a technologically advanced magnifying glass for all of the problems the education system already presents. And while AI could undoubtedly be a powerful tool for students when presented with the right guardrails, as with everything we've discussed, there are fundamentally no signs
that kid is
that
mad.
those guardrails are even a priority. So when we consider that Gen Alpha will be entering the job market within the next few years, this rapid pursuit of AI has the potential to fundamentally reduce human cognitive agency, critical thinking, and independent problem solving over time. And so what I hope that we're beginning to recognize is that fundamentally, this is an unbelievably complex issue. There is not one thing that we can point to and say, this is the issue.
Yeah, because I see how it could be like good for, I guess, like, I don't know, stuff that takes a lot of time so that people could like focus on the things that take like a lot of brain power and problem solving. But if kids are already relying on making things easier with AI, then like they're not even getting the problem solving skills to do the hard stuff.
And it's not only that this has just happened recently, this is decades of decay. Yes, it's easy to say, wow, 40% of fourth graders can't read, you know, and judge them when half of American adults can't read below or can't read above a 6th grade reading level.
Yeah.
We're talking about serious issues. And as the K-shaped economy only gets worse, because it's going to, there is no incentive for it not to. We're talking about a serious education crisis.
Yeah.
Like, this is a serious issue. It might.
That's why I'm happy that, like, I'm surrounded by old people. I love my chat because I feel like you guys get it. I would never want, like, a very young chat because that is probably Daycare Simulator. Oh, hell no.
Be convenient. It might be funny to just kind of blame the iPad kids or joke about them and judge and all of these things.
But they didn't, like, have a choice. It sucks. Like, basically, I think history repeats itself. Like, this is probably the way our parents felt whenever the internet happened. Because I remember my mom would always be like, oh, when I had to research something, I had to go to the library and, like, find a book and read it and sit down and figure it out. But you guys just get to Google everything. But now that's us with AI.
This is going to impact your future. The thing that we have to take away from this, when we look at the fact that teachers are now making less than they were a decade ago when adjusted for inflation, and all of the extra responsibilities and just challenges that they're having to face, the fact that there are hundreds of thousands, millions of
what comes after AI? State mandated cat girl girlfriends
of 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th graders out there that are having to steal from their school, that are having to steal food from their school because they're hungry. That childhood poverty is increasing. It's increasing rapidly.
Yeah.
And that there is a dramatic resurgence in child labor. The United States does not have a money issue. It has a values issue.
Bro!
We do not care about our future. That has been blatant.
Well, it's just always kind of, the thing I've noticed about the US is it's always like individualism focused. So it's like, well, if I'm doing good, like, fuck everybody else. Also, why is thank you.
We have been so busy trying to figure out how to make this country great again. That was Ronald Reagan's campaign. It's been happening since the 1980s. We forgot to figure out where is it that we're going.
Yeah.
And so with this, we don't cherish the individuals that are instilling the values into our youth.
That's
They're
sad.
replaceable cogs in the machine, and that's horrible. It is a tragedy. And it's very obvious that we don't care about our emerging generations. Look at what millennials had to go through. Look at what Gen Z is currently going through.
That's what I said earlier. It's just individualism. Like, it's just like, oh, well, I'm cool, so who cares?
I'll even say Gen X. It continues to happen. I'll even go as far, and I've said it many times, the youngest baby boomers entered a horrible job market. It continuously happens, and nothing is being done to stop it from happening. The unfortunate issue is that we at least had the ability to not have the technological advancement compound as much as it is now.
Yeah.
By the time Gen Alpha is my age at 26,
Dude, we had like the cool internet when I was a kid. Like playing cool math and I don't know, having fun with your friends and goofing off. Like it was fun. And now it's like scary. Everybody knows about it. So there's like creeps online and like also you're relying too much on it for everything that you do every single day. Like we had the best internet.
the world will be unrecognizable. We're doing nothing to guide them. It is just such a tragedy.
You sound old. I know I sound old, but like, I mean that shit. We had the good internet, man. We had Club Penguin and you're jealous. Just say it.
I'm not married. I don't have kids. And I don't have any biological little kids in my life. But I do spend a lot of time around family, friends,
Yeah.
and I get to I'm privileged to do some babysitting with some people, some little kids that I absolutely love. And I look at them, and they are what instills hope in me the most.
Aww.
You know, the work that I do and how much time I spend on this, and many of you know that have been a part of the channel for a long time. The reason that I do this is because I care about our country, and I care
Aw.
about you, and I care about the people of our country. But I really want to have kids. And so I want to do the best that I can to be a good father.
Yeah, it's like scary now. I don't know. It's just like you can do everything you can at home, but you don't know what's happening when they go to school. And then they just like, I don't know, they're like free reign, just whatever, soaking everything in. And like, I don't know. It's so scary, man. I'm not responsible enough for children.
And when I look at these little kids, they're 4 and 3 years old. It just fills me with so much joy because I see the future. And I see the ability to be able to instill in them good values.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I also see the fact that they had a tablet when they were 2 years old.
Yeah.
And that, I'm not around enough. Again, I'm not biologically related, but I have heard that they are already at 4 and 3 years old telling the responsible adults to F off.
Wow! 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 Oh, hell no! My mom would have got me good for that! Oh, hell no! Yeah, that is like a parenting thing. That is crazy. I would have been dead. I would have died. Yeah. Ivan, thank you for the 100 bits, and Kuma, thank you for the 100 bits. In my time, there were no books. We wrote everything on banana leaves. There were no doors or the number 24. That was invented long after the war. Ivan, what happened to you? Somebody help him. And Kuma said, I graduated high school in 92. The internet was just dial-up bulletin boards.
So the oldest boy says that, and then the little to F off. So the oldest boy says that, and then the little girl copies him.
Oh my God.
And, there's been times where I went to go pick him up. The little girl is scrolling on TikTok at 3 years old.
Dude, there is some wild shit on TikTok. At 3? Nah. Don't these devices have like kid settings on them?
And so there's degrees of challenges to this because we could say, why are the parents doing this? You could say, well, they're having to work. They're having to do all of these other things. You know, I don't know if that's my part to be judging. Do I think that parents need to do more? I think always. And I think that that's always happened. Do I think that our education system needs to do more? Absolutely. I don't know why phones were allowed in the school.
Yeah.
But I also understand some of the nuances behind all of these things. Again, what this requires is complex conversations. One of the things that I always do in my videos is that I call for community. I say that these issues are so big that one person is not going to be able to take down social media. It just won't happen. And in many ways, I actually think that that's good because it shows that what we have to have is collaboration and community.
Yeah.
But every time I mention that as the solution, all I get in the comment sections are, okay, but what's the actual solution?
You want like a step-by-step recipe?
And so we are lying to ourselves if we think that there is a bigger solution than community. And what is happening with Gen Alpha and the education system is the perfect representation of that. It is going to take a village to be able to recoup and overcome the losses that we have right now. When I was born, my grandparents told my parents that they didn't want to be involved because they already raised kids. So I was raised without biological grandparents predominantly. So what it took was a friend of my parents to become my grandpa. And
see, this is also what's hard is that you kind of have to break the cycle yourself, which is difficult when you're put in these situations because you can either choose to be like, oh, I feel bad for myself and like I'm gonna go down a bad road, or be like, I know that shit sucks, so I'm never gonna do that to anybody else.
His son to become my, you could say uncle, or I kind of think of him more of like an older brother. And that's really the family I have. My uncle stepped in and he has provided me with a tremendous amount of wisdom. You know, my mom would work, she would drop me off at school, she would work all day, and then she would pick me up and we would clean the school to be able to help make ends meet. And I watched the parents judge my mom for doing that.
Dude, that's the way it was with my mom. She was waiting tables and then I would go and sit at the tables that she had and I would draw in the little coloring book all the time. And it was just like the only option that we basically had.
But that was a sacrifice she did for us.
Yeah.
When my stepdad came into the picture, him and my mom didn't run off. My mom was cooking dinner and he was sitting at the table with Spider-Man flashcards.
I thought she was a cop. Oh yeah, she is now. But like, you know, you guys know how like before I used to wait tables and now I get to be an anime woman. Yippee!
Helping me learn multiplications. I'll never forget 6 times 8 is 48. That is what he reminded me of. And I can even remember the Spider-Man on the flashcards because we honed in on it so much. He cared about my future. I am a direct byproduct of the adults in my life.
Dude, and that's what I said earlier too, is like the RNG sometimes, it sucks, man. Like you just have to persevere with whatever you're handed.
I didn't just willy-nilly come to this point. Yes, it took responsibility on my part and sacrifice and discipline and all of these things. But in many ways that was instilled in me by these adults. And so what I'm saying is, if you're an older individual, don't be the grandparent that says, yeah, I've already done my job. Like, how could you think that way?
Yeah.
And if you're a parent and you're doing your best, you're doing your best. But if you do think, man, maybe I'm leaving a little bit on the table, or maybe I am scrolling too much, or maybe I'm missing out on something, give a little bit more. There's always a little bit more that we can do.
And it makes a huge difference.
Kids deserve it. I just think it is just so sad to see this. It's mind-boggling. It truly is.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think I have much more else to say.
Aw.
I think it just makes me really sad.
Aw. Dude, but he did it. Look at him now. Like, he's spreading a good message and he's making a difference for other people whenever he didn't really have that for himself. And I think that's really admirable.
If this has provided value to you, I would really appreciate it if you subscribe if you haven't already done so and like the video. I'm trying to do the best that I can.
You're doing great.
Trying to target the issues that I think that are impacting us. I want us to go in a forward direction. It feels like it's getting harder to do that.
Yeah.
But I'm doing the best that I can. And I know that you guys are as well. I mean, we have a great community. We're we're often collaborating and communicating, and I really appreciate that. So thank you all so much. Until next time.
Wow, wait, at the end, that got so emotional. I wasn't expecting that, but like I said before, you're doing great, dude. Like, that was such a great video, and it left an impact on me, and I really appreciate that. Thank you so much for watching, by the way. If you're new here, please come by the Twitch stream, twitch.tv/BerryCrepe, and please check out the original. That would be freaking awesome. I hope that you have a great evening, and goodbye,